Committee meeting, roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims,
Here.
Alderman Gold,
Here.
Alderman Shelton.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
All
Okay,
members
great,
present.
everyone's here. Item number 2 on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the agenda? Are there any proposed changes, observations to be made? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. That'll be approved by acclamation, unless not seeing any objection. Item 3, report of committee chair and alderman. I have no report. Alderman Gould,
No report.
Alderman Shelton.
No report.
Alderwoman Parker Tice.
No report.
All right, moving along. Item 4 is the city administrator report. 4A is the compensation survey and presentation to the Board of Aldermen timeline. Who is leading us through that?
Jason.
This was more informational than anything else, just to kind of give the committee an idea of what our timetable was. In having discussions with our management team as well as our consultant, we wanted to make sure that the project was concluded in time to be put in the budget so that we didn't have some of the issues that we faced in years past. So we kind of set the date to be presented to the committee and then ultimately the board and worked our way back from that. That's basically all that this document is. I'm not going to go through it word for word. If you've got specific questions, please feel free to answer or to question me and I'll answer as best I can.
You know, using the same crystal ball I have, do you foresee that we're going to need additional meetings to go through this material?
Well, I think our next topic may bring that up.
Okay.
Again, this was just the initial timeline.
Okay.
The next topic on the agenda is requesting some information or some feedback back from the committee, which may in turn need to go to the full board. I don't know. I'm going to kind of leave that to you guys to let me know what your thoughts are so that we can present the information to the consultant and get it back in the format that meets the needs of the board.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Questions on that one? All right.
I'll just stay up here because.
Are you staying up for 4B, discussion on compensation philosophy, compensation survey, and preparatory work?
Right. So what the concern that had come up multiple times during the last compensation survey was with regards to the manner in which the calculation was done to make the presentation to the board. Initially, as the board will recall, we had a 75th percentile philosophy across the board. That changed last year. We went 75th and 95th, 95th for the public safety employees, 75th for the remainder of the employee populace. One of the things that had come up repeatedly was an expression on the part of several of the board members that the concern was that the end result didn't meet with what the initial thought would be. In other words, that choosing a 75th percentile philosophy would mean that basically Brentwood was above 75% of the comparators, with 25% being above the city of Brentwood. And that was partially why the decision was made to go with the 95th percentile for the public safety employees. In doing so, we kept a calculation in place which had questions with regards to standard deviation. One of the ways that we could potentially circumvent that would be, rather than implementing that type of a philosophy for the manner in which the documentation is brought back to the board, would be if the board were to say, as an example, we want to be second in the market or third in the market or something along those lines. So rather than using a calculation to determine that grid, if the board decided its philosophy was based on what our understanding was, we wanted to be the third place in the market, then we could present that to our consultant, who in turn could then develop the grids based upon that philosophy, as opposed to trying to use a mathematical calculation to determine where they ended up and to hopefully align with what the strategy was. Does that make sense? I hope. Paula, did.
So basically, are we continuing with 95th and 75th, or do we want to be second highest and go with that phrasing? And if we did, then it would eliminate all the calculation, standard deviation, that seems to come up a lot. I mean, even though I think the board has been consistent in that if our subject matter expert is recommending that it be used, that it stay in. So we just need clarity so that we can give appropriate direction to the consultant. If you remember, last time we did it in 20, I think was when we initially engaged Linda, I had directed her to give the board a number of options, highest of best, and even though the board didn't give me any direction, but at least it was a basis for coming back with data. So we're doing it a little different this time. We want direct guidance from the committee and the board.
It's true that the use of standard deviation is the standard in industry, right?
Yes.
ma'am.
I don't have the bill in front or the resolution or what we passed. I thought that we had sort of a philosophy established.
We
of
did.
95th percentile,
Right.
public safety, 75.
Right.
With standard deviation.
Right.
So I thought that was where we were.
It is where we are.
And are
But-
there, I mean, because I like
You could say
I like
do
the-
nothing.
I like the philosophy. I mean, and chime in, please. Like, I think that we have an adopted philosophy, and that we should use the best math to reflect that in a way
Absolutely.
that doesn't,
Yeah. From the
blur
subject
line.
matter
So,
experts.
Yeah.
If there is no direction other than the board already has a philosophy, it's what was adopted this past year, then we have our direction.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think that if we're hiring consultants and experts, and they say the best practice is to use that math to get the right data, then, I mean, it seems to me that who are we to say, well, you know what, we're just going to throw that out because we don't like that, how it pans out. I mean, I also have concerns. Are you saying that if we decided to forego the idea of a percentile philosophy, which gives us ranges, to just say, okay, we want to be number 2, is that number 2 just for uniform employees? Or does it go to now number 2 for uniform and then number 4 for non-uniform? Like, that just seems to be a bit of
It
a
depends on the
complicated
board.
mix when we
It
we know
depends on
it's
the
already
board.
complicated with the multiple percentages.
So that basis has been established now, right? So we can go forward with that.
Okay.
Which so for non-uniform, it would be 4th. I think that's what the 75th stands for. And then 95th would be, well, I'm speculating here.
Right, I mean, I think that's where,
second.
I don't know that it's apples to
So,
apples.
yeah, so we're just looking for clarity. And if the clarity is the board has spoken, established a philosophy last year, go forward with that, then that's the direction to the consultant.
And it wouldn't eliminate the pay grids per se. It would be developing the pay grids based upon that philosophy. The only reason that this was even put pen to paper is a number of the board members had expressed concern about using a mathematical calculation to derive what the ultimate philosophy of the board was. And by developing the 75th, 95th, that got them closer to what the initial understanding was. That's the only reason to even bring this forward.
Alderwoman Tice?
I'll agree with, I guess what's been echoed twice now, that I think we established a philosophy. There was a lot of discussion last year over a lot of time, and I don't think we should rehash it now. I think we should go with what we're doing. I think the 95th percentile was the board's attempt to to get the original thought that apparently was the thought back in 2015 or whenever this started. So I would agree that we should keep with what we have now.
We have our direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
You guys did all the work last year before me, so
We don't want to do it.
There's
Do
still,
not ask about standard deviation.
I followed along.
it's on video.
Followed along.
There will be,
Several meetings
though-
are on video.
Several is the wrong word.
Several is the wrong, it was long. There will be multiple meetings, so to your earlier question, maybe Kelly can propose some additional dates for your consideration so that when it comes back, I don't remember how many meetings we had. I'd like to think that maybe
No, I'm sorry, continue, I just.
maybe we'd have less than 4.
So I guess it seems to me to, and again, we had a lot of meetings, so my memory might be foggy on this, but some of the concern was also in the fact that some of our titles and descriptions were not matching or giving us enough leeway within the comparator cities, which then made our standard deviation process a little bit more clunky because we had to throw some out because they didn't match up. But, so when we do this process again, are we looking at, yeah, sorry, Jason. Are we looking at titles and descriptions and making sure that we kind of modify some of them to make sure that we have a true comparator in the
100%.
mix?
So if the first item that was on the agenda kind of established that timeline, I've already begun meeting with a couple of the department heads. I have some scheduled for the remainder of this week and into the beginning of next week, where we're actually going through and reviewing all the job descriptions that we have. One of the directions that we gave to our consultant was this time they are going to request the job descriptions from the municipalities, and they will make the comparison as opposed to relying upon a clerical person or an HR person within a given municipality to say, yes, this job description closely matches ours.
Okay.
So that hopefully we will eliminate that potential concern. And again, that'll give us the opportunity. I know that like on the police department side, there were some concerns about the supervisory staff. We want to make sure that the job descriptions more accurately represent what their end goal would be, and the same is true within Parks and Recreation and Public Works. We're examining all of our maintenance worker personnel, because that seems to be one of our more difficult positions to fill, so that we can get a better accurate representation of what our comparators are doing, and then the end result will be closer to what it needs to be.
Perfect.
Great. Alderwoman Tice?
So an issue that was of concern the last time is that there are some positions that don't have enough comparators in other cities, so then there's no there aren't enough for standard deviation. So, and especially with the economy as robust as it is right now, what is she doing to address those jobs?
One prime example of that would be, as an example, our sanitation
Right,
worker.
that's what, yeah.
You know, because our sanitation, the driver predominantly, the only other municipality, well, I think there may be 2. It's Kirkwood and I
St.
can't.
Peters.
Thank you. That have those. St. Peter's they have them, but they're not one of our comparators. So we are going to look at those, and we may do some internal equity. And again, that's another reason why we've established the timeline that we have, so that when the results come back from Higbee and Associates, the management team has an opportunity to kind of have some back and forth with Linda to potentially try to justify where the positions would fall, so that we are closer to what, again, the board's philosophy is. The big concern that we've had in the past are for some of our positions, I'm thinking primarily those that turn quite often, like Public Works and our Parks and Recreation. That 75th percentile seems to be a little bit on the skewed side, and we want to make sure, again, by doing all the legwork on the front end, that our matchups are that much closer, and therefore we'll be able to pay more competitively and hopefully retain personnel for a longer period of time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Next item would be 4C, general updates.
So in the municipal code, the city's purchasing agent is given authority to approve the disposal of surplus items. And one of the items that has been brought to my attention, so this is information only, one of the items that has been brought to my attention is from Chief Cottrell. And these are the firefighting helmets that have reached the end of their useful life, which is 10 years. It is his intention to allow the individual firefighters who wore them to keep them. We assess no monetary value on them at this point, so I'm just sharing this with you now rather than putting it in the weekly update.
So you don't need any, I mean, that
No.
sounds good to me. You
No,
don't-
information only.
Okay. All right, great, thank you. 5A is or item 5 is department reports. 5A is progress report on the 2020 and 2021 audits.
We have online this evening, what's Andrew Zabel, and he is what's his title? He's the principal at CLA. And there he is. Robin and I met with him earlier this afternoon. There is a memo in the board packet, but in our conversation, it just seemed a little bit more robust, and he can talk about transition from prior audit firms and consultants. He can talk about the process, the workflow. There's a site visit coming up, the risk analysis they're gonna do, timeline and deliverable. In our meeting, he tells me that we're still on schedule for May 30th, and we will most likely have that document in hand before that deadline. But as he talked more about getting into the 2021 audit, he talks about industry standard timeline and how we might need to push that another 30 days till June ending for the 2021 audit. So I just wanted you all to hear directly from him. Andrew?
Yep, thanks, Paula. So I'll just quickly go over the conversation that I had with Robin and Bola, and I'm speaking with Robin probably every other day, just some status updates, questions, and things like that. So I've had great cooperation and coordination with Robin and her team. So to give the committee some perspective here, our scope of work covers 2 years. We're kind of doing these 2 years at once or kind of concurrently, which is unusual just because of the delays, as you guys are aware of, as related to the 2020 audit. So the scope or the phases of our engagement is kind of broken down into 2 layers here. The first is what I'm referring to as accounting assistance. And that's really related to assistance with Brentwood from preparing account reconciliations, as well as helping prepare the financial statements, which is an extremely large document, not a small undertaking. This is common with a lot of cities. For example, I do this with your neighbor, the city of Maplewood, simply because this is a technical skill that if you just do it once a year, it's really tough to get really good at. Us, we live in this environment, and oftentimes it's more efficient just to outsource some of these services. In addition to that, we're doing the financial statement audit as well as the single audit. The single audit is related to federal awards and federal money. That may or may not be applicable to City of Brentwood. It's definitely not going to be applicable for 2020, likely not for 2021, for future years, though it could be. So just to reiterate, we have 2 phases of our engagement: accounting assistance and the financial statement audit. So as part of that, we do things to ensure independence, right? And that we want to make sure that while we are helping prepare, account reconciliations, the ultimate decision as it's related to making adjustments is really held with Bola and Robin and other members of management to determine what those adjustments and amounts should be, so that doesn't impair our independence for doing the financial statement audit. So, and the thing that you guys are going to be worried about is where are we now? So whenever you're transitioning from a new auditor or a new accounting firm that's going to do the outsourced services for you, there's a normal transition and headaches, and we have gone through that process. This is unique, though, compared to a lot of my other engagements, because we're actually working with 3 different firms or consultants. Obviously, you had your prior year auditor, the 2019 auditors. In 2019, you also had a separate firm that did the financial statement preparation and outsourced accounting services, as well as for 2020, you had engaged an individual to help you with the account reconciliations. So it's been a transition working with those 3 different service providers. It's come with its normal headaches. The biggest thing and time that takes us the most amount of time is we actually, in order to make sure we have your accounts and the activity reported correctly, we do actually recreate the 2019 financial statements. That makes things easier to ensure that we have numbers and accounts are properly mapped, and that the financial statements are ultimately complete and accurate. So as of now, as it relates to 2020, We are about wrapped up with the accounting assistance. So we have completed the account reconciliation analysis. We've given some feedback to Robin as to things that she might want to consider, whether those are adjustments or maybe some other changes. We've completed the Excel financial statements, which is a big undertaking because it's taking about a couple thousand of accounts, and we map all that activity in your financial statements. And in addition to that, we're working through the draft, what I refer to as the Word financial statements, but that's your MD&A section, which we're drafting for the city, as well as the notes to those financial statements. In addition to that, we started working through the audit. We completed what I'll refer to as administrative or planning type of items, or the risk assessment is common. But on Friday, we plan to go on site to actually start what I refer to as our substantive audit work. And that's really testing and confirming cash balances and testing underlying transactions. So that's as it relates to 2020. For 2021, we're still waiting on completed account reconciliations for cash and investments. We expect to have those shortly, but as Bola and I and Robin discussed, the normal time frame to get an audit done and out the door, the maximum period of time is typically 9 months for governmental organizations. And I say 9 months because that's a period of time you have to complete your financial statements if you have federal money. However, that's the max amount of time. A good rule of thumb is 6 months. You ultimately have to consider who the users of these financial statements are and what sort of external factors might be in place, such as bond covenants and so forth. So, as I talked through this with Bola, you guys really don't have significant pressure from users of your financial statements. So 6 months is a very reasonable time to get your audit done. I think 2021, that's doable. Obviously 2020 came with its problems, but going forward, I think that you guys can be in a position where this is a smooth transition, and getting an audit done timely is something that's going to be second nature. So, that's a quick summary of the conversation I had with Bola and Robin today. I really just open up for questions, and I want you guys to be comfortable with the process.
I'll say something. This is the most hopeful I've been since I've been on the board that we're actually going to have audits finished. So thank you for updating us and for working with the city on this.
Of course.
Do you feel like you have everything you need in order to go forward, and that a sort of a path after 2020 and 2021 are complete, a path to where we don't go through this pain again, and that there would be timely completion of these audits?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think the big thing for Robin is she's 9 months into this new role. She's coming with, I think, a lot of work and some turnover. By the end of, after we get 2021 done, I'd say by the end of this year, she's going to be caught up, and she'll be able to get through the account reconciliations as it relates to your treasury activity timely. So I truly would like to have this done May of each year, based upon other timelines that I know I have in place in the June timeframe. So I don't see why we can't get this done in a timely fashion each year. And, a lot of these first year headaches and woes that we have on our side, that time just not going to exist in future periods.
Do you feel like you're getting what you need from our prior outside party consultants?
Yep. Yeah. I don't want to name names, but yeah, we've had coordination with everybody. They've provided the information that I've requested. So, it's never perfect, and they may not respond as quickly as you want, but ultimately we're getting the information that we need.
That's great. Are there any other? Well, thank you, and
Yeah,
keep up the good work.
of course.
Stay the
of course.
course. That's the points of light. All right, so
Thank you, Andrew.
Of course.
All right, looks like the next item on the agenda is 5B, the financial statement for fiscal year 2022.
That's Robin.
Good evening. I'm going to present to the committee the financial statement through February 28, 2022. And some of this is a repeat from January. So let's cover the revenue portion first. In my analysis, I'll give you a variance as well. So we'll just start with general revenue. We're performing very well. Collections on some of our line items are higher than we anticipated during the budget. General sales tax is coming in pretty strong. The revenues are higher than budgeted for the month. And again, if the trend continues, we will exceed revenue projections versus what we budgeted. Same thing with the general use tax, which is our use tax. It's still performing very strong, and we're on target to outperform the budget revenue projections in that line item as well. The municipal fire sales tax remains strong as well. The revenue is increasing, and this particular revenue line is not subject to revenue pooling, which gives us a strong advantage. The next one would be the business license. We're doing pretty good with collections. A lot of this has to do with the new planning and development team working very hard and diligently to reclassify those businesses and get those receipts in. Business licenses are renewed every year, starting in January, and most businesses have to pay by February, so that's why those numbers are coming in strong at the end of February. Utility contracts, yeah, sometimes in St. Louis area, we get 4 seasons in one day, so we have some slight fluctuations due to the unpredictable weather conditions, but overall, combined, all utilities are overall steady with the collections coming in stably. Revenue remains steady in the next category, which is the public safety tax. Ad valorem, we have collected, we haven't received any revenues going back to January of this year. So last revenues would have been last year in 2021. The minor sources of revenue that the city receives, all of these are, this is a compilation of a number of permits, licenses, some fines, just the smaller line items in the budget. So that's what you're seeing there, but those sources are slight over our monthly revenue projections. So you have things in there like the garbage pickups, the household pickups, the weekly household pickups, things like that. That is what's contained in that line item. Road and bridge tax. So again, the city's valuation of roads and bridges continue to contribute to the increase in this budget line, and we will outperform the budget if this trend continues. Ambulance fees, I'm happy to say they are remaining steady. This is a line item that I'm very interested in because I like to watch this line item just to make sure that we're still collecting at the rates that we have historically, especially when sometimes we have to refund fees back. And we have consultant fees as well. So I keep a watchful eye on this line, but we're steady in that line. Permits, which would be automobile license, occupancy permits, business permits, things of that nature. Those are slightly increased over last month's collections. We have a slight decrease in fines. So I'm watching that line item to make sure that nothing strange is happening and that we're collecting everything we're supposed to. The next line item is the American Rescue Plan Act. We got a surprise disbursement of $7,700, I believe. Someone declined funding, and we were sent a portion of that funding. This does not represent the second and final disbursement that the city is expecting for 2022. We don't have a date to have those funds yet, but we're mid-April, and we are watching the bank to see, when we might get that funding. So that is the story for general revenues. We have a total of $3.5 million collected through the first 2 months of the year. So I'll pause here and allow any questions or comments.
Alderman Gould?
Can you remind me, and maybe I know this from our previous years and everything, but the ad valorem, is that through real estate taxes? What do we expect to get? Where do we get those taxes, I guess, that revenue?
They're a source of real estate taxes, personal property taxes, and there's one other tax. Yeah, those two. Okay.
That's basically it. Okay.
Woods County.
So, and there's no concern that we don't have any of that? Is it just a lag on? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I have a question. Could you just, since I'm newer to this, could you explain to me what you mean when you're talking about the ambulance fees and reimbursements? Is that dealing with like insurance and collections? And can you just clarify that?
Yes. So depending on there are a number of ways that we get ambulance fees. Some of them are private pay. Some of them are credit cards where customers pay by credit card. Some of them pay by electronic funds transfer. Sometimes the insurance company pays. But we do what's called a settle up. So whatever we collect, if there's a billing for it, our revenue is reduced by that amount, but then sometimes we do owe refunds for one reason or another, and we get those reports and we have to refund the money.
So it can
back.
fluctuate and go back and
Yes,
forth? Okay.
yes.
Great.
But overall, our revenues are steady there.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
And just to sort of put a bow on it in general revenue, we're either, at or above our projections so
Yes.
far for the first 2 months of 2022.
Yes,
which
we
is
are.
Outstanding. I have a comment. I really like this table. I find it very easy to follow, so thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So, anyway.
So do we want to move on to the capital improvement fund revenues? So in capital improvement fund, sales tax, we collected January and February, $751,483. Interest income of $237. And again, revenues are steady through the first 2 months of the year. Any questions there? Economic Development Fund, another fund that remains steady and strong. First 2 months of the year, we've collected $969,893. And we are on target to possibly outperform the budget for economic sales development tax. Any questions there?
We include in the narrative in board docs, Robin shared with Craig and I last week that the fund balance today for the economic development sales tax is now $2,310,876. When we provided this number to you in October of last year, it was 1.7 million. So that shows that we received a significant increase at the end of last year. So that stands at 2.3 million, 2,310,876. So sometime this year, we talked about maybe the board or this committee having a discussion on what you all want to do with that money ultimately. There's no hurry in having that discussion because I think this is a page in the budget document where the debt service for 2018 COPS starting in 2030, well, in 2024 goes to 2.3, and then in 2031, it goes to 3.1, and the 2019 COPS stays flat. That's about a little over 2.3, 2.4. However, the good thing is we have some remaining TIF districts that will be paying off. So the incremental revenue will now come back to all the taxing entities. So that gives the city a little bit more money to comfortably pay this debt and interest, and then do other capital projects. And then we also have the community center debt service also paying off in another year or so. So that's 500,000 that will be coming to the city. So ultimately, I think if you take a global look of all of this, things are positive coming forward. So we just wanted to share some of that good news with you all. And Pat Kelly, this is also in the board document, shared with me that there was a bill that the governor signed into law last August that removed the sharing distribution for the use tax. So if you go back and look at that ordinance that was signed by the mayor, it was 85-15. City kept 85, shared 15. Now, all we're paying is the 1% administrative fee. The city keeps the balance. Alderman Gould.
Yeah, just as clarification, when you say economic development sales tax board, you're talking about the economic development sales tax board that would then meet and do an initial recommendation potentially?
No, I thought it was.
Is that still in existence, that
Oh,
board?
yeah, it's still in existence. We possibly meet once or twice a year. We've already met once this year to have them adopt the annual report so we could submit it to the state. But I think that discussion needs to start with the board.
Okay,
And
so-
then a recommendation could go to the Economic Development Sales Tax Board, and then we would execute it.
Okay, yeah, I guess I had that reversed in my mind, thinking that that board looks at it first and maybe,
That wasn't my,
I got you. Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool.
okay.
Stormwater and Parks Improvement Fund is the next fund. Sales tax for stormwater and parks, $883,950 through the end of February. Ice rink revenue, little over $150,000. Program fees, $11,421. That's a combination of all the program fees in that fund. Room rentals, $14,371. Still seeing a significant amount of pandemic-related cancellations. Park permits, $2,350. Sale of city property, I looked at my financial statement that I provided, and I missed a couple of lines. Sale of city property, $66, first 2 months of the year. And the minor sources of revenue is not $11,003, it's $19,573. We have some MSD intergovernmental revenue that we received from Great Rivers Greenway. That's $32,333, and grants are coming in. I'm seeing them at least once a month, sometimes twice a month. So total for Fund 50 would be $1,076, $117,000. And then with the Brentwood bound intergovernmental revenues and grants, we have total revenues of over $2.2 million as of February 28th of this year. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's cover expenses. Departments are doing very well with budgeting their expenses in the first 2 months of the year. I did not give any explanations because operations are pretty much stable and standard, paying salaries, paying vendors, administration. has a budget of $951,000. To date, we've expended close to $250,000. Municipal operating has a budget of $1.7 million. To date, we've expended about $325,000. Police and fire, fire, $2.7 million, with expenses of about $700,000. Police, $3.7 million, expenses of $967,000. I'm gonna pause right there. Those, first four accounts that I mentioned, they're all, if we're looking again at the budget to be a 12 each month, everybody is pretty much on target, and some departments are actually operating under that for the first 2 months of the year. Police seizure, nothing's been spent so far, but they do have a budget of $25,000 for 2022. Courts, $184,775. They've spent close to $50,000. Streets has a budget of $1.4 million. They've expended close to $400,000. And rather than me read all of this to you, because you already have it in the report, as of the end of February, for the general fund, we have a budget of $12,95,800, and so far, we've had expenses of $3,028,024, which is pretty good. Any questions, comments?
So just our expenses are on budget as well.
Yes. And we're making sure that we're paying people on time to avoid any late fees and interest charges. Next fund would be the Capital Improvement Fund. $2.4 million. Today, we have, as of February 28th, $409,729, with 83.5% of the budget remaining. The Economic Development Fund, this number for expenditures is strictly related to debt service and administrative fees. So that's $726,150 of the $2.5 million that was budgeted. Stormwater and Parks has a budget of $34,674,132 to date. That fund has spent $1,386,183, and they have 96% of the budget remaining. And Sewer Improvement Fund, budgeted at $146,500, and expenses of $10,325, with 93% of the budget remaining after 2 months of this year. Any questions or comments?
Tice?
So could we don't actually have the expense report, so if you could attach that maybe after the meeting so we could skim through it. Sounds like big picture, it's all fine, but it's still nice to look through. So, thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the financial statement through February 28th. Thank you.
Much. All right, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The only item, 6A, would be the minutes from the March meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to review? Any comments, changes, objections? Any objection of approving by acclamation? All right, moving right along. 7A, item 7 on the agenda is old business. 7A is proposed revisions to the Brentwood Municipal Code, Chapter 135, purchasing.
There we go. All right, so we're gonna run through this pretty quickly. I know you guys have a long agenda. So this is basically kind of following up on our conversation about the purchasing code a couple months ago. We just kind of put together a quick presentation about a couple things that we'll ask of staff. As a reminder, this is what the recommendation was. Anything less than $2,500 would be attained the most expedient way possible. $2,500 to $19,999 would require a minimum of 3 quotes. And then 20,000 would be the formal bid request. So that's kind of what was recommended by finance and really staff. And I'll ask the chief and the major to come up here and talk about it, and Dan can pipe in a little bit too. But there's a couple reasons that we are asking about this. And the first one is really the efficiencies, especially the purchases under $500. That becomes very time-consuming when you're really looking at things, things such as repairs. From us, one of the things we talk about is mulch. We know where the best price to get mulch is, but because we have to get a quantity of that, it's over $500, we then have to complete that TRA form. It then has to get us approved by finance and sent back to us. And then at that point, then we can go get the mulch weeks later. And it kind of puts a hamper on everything we try to do. And I know Chief and Major had a couple of things they want to talk about as well.
Thank you. Very time consuming. Do it on a weekly basis. The forms then go to BOLA and to Robin for signatures. So just the multiple layers of authorization over $500. The example I'd like to provide is select medical supplies. I've put in a request this year on one box of needles. The price of needles have gone up tremendously. And so it just requires a very lengthy process that this extension would speed the purchasing up for our department.
Ladies and gentlemen, in terms of just dovetailing on what Chief Cottrell had indicated, for the police department, for example, we, as you probably know, we have some pretty sophisticated equipment in the car. It's about $50,000 worth of equipment plus the police car. And we're experiencing an issue right now with a car. We think we've got it figured out, but the part is over $500 to buy to fix what's going on with it. And we're hoping that our tech has a used one on his truck, and that will be less than $500. And we'll go that route because we need to put the car on the street. And that's just an example of when it's $500, the process it would take for us, that car would remain out of service until we get that part fixed.
And as Chief Cottrell and both Major McIntyre both said, imagine what it's like right now too, with everything that's kind of prices have been increasing. It makes it harder and harder. Dan, I don't know if you want to add anything, but I'll take that as a no. And then as you move up, the purchases over 10,000, as you know, competitive bidding is a need that every municipality has to do. I think you see a lot of cities moving from a lower bid up to a higher bid just because the amount of time it takes to secure those type of things. And one of the things that I put on there, and I think the chiefs kind of talked about the same thing, is just when you talk about equipment, especially small equipment, aerators, gators, bunker carts, things like that, all that's really under $20,000. But then to go through a process where you really can't even get apples to apples comparison because a John Deere is very different from a Kabuka type of machine, it makes it really difficult to kind of get some of that stuff done. So moving on, just a couple of ways as a reminder how staff makes purchasing, because I know there's a question about specifically capital expenditures too. So the code right now says anything under 10,000 is open market and anything over 10,000 competitive bid. In addition, there's obviously a state contract, and the state contract is kind of very similar to purchasing cooperatives where they hold competitively solicited cooperative contracts. So in the purchasing cooperatives, you have just basic companies like Buy Board, CPN, KPN, TIPS, those type of things. They actually go out and seek those bids and do it. And it's in anything. Ball field lights, in my mind, all the way down to kind of scoreboards. You kind of do, there's a lot of things that they bid on. Playground equipment can be on there. And the state contract's very similar, except for the state takes care of that. And primarily, the state contract is used a lot of times for vehicles. So when you think about all the vehicles we purchase for the fleet, I'd say almost all of it is done through a state contract, the Missouri state contract. So just kind of a way we look at the purchasing here. And then we wanted to go through all the capital purchases for this year, again, because I know that was a question, so we'll give, first one is Chief.
Thank you. So we have 3 items under capital for purchase this year, and we're going to use a national purchasing contract for all 3 items. The heart monitor will be another upgrade. The helmets, so this project is complete. All have been received. We have most all issued to date. And that, again, that was a national purchasing contract, which we got approval last spring. It's how long the lag time was on that, the lead time. And then the CPR assist machine, as recommended by the American Heart Association, national purchasing contract.
That word, I have trouble with, judicial. The judicial department has a shredder in the capital purchasing, and honestly, that's really not really follows the capital line, but it's in our capital budget. So that, again, is just a small purchase if they need it for their department. And then I'll turn it over to Major for police.
As you can see on there, that's our body armor right there. That we buy that on the St. Louis County's contract that they negotiated with Leon Uniform Company. So we, much like Chief Cottrell, we have already had, I think we had 18 officers that needed body armor, and that they've already been measured, and that order has already been placed. These are the security cameras for the police department. We have, I won't say that we have a complete blind spot, but we have some spots that we don't see as well as we'd like to see, particularly in the back of our building. This is for the police vehicles. We were notified 3 weeks ago by Chrysler in a one-line sentence that said, your order has been canceled. So the order that we tried to get in December, did get in December, was canceled. We pivoted very quickly and reached out to Don Brown Chevrolet, and we were able to order 3 Chevy Tahoes. That was the only vehicles that we could get. And we're hoping that we're told these might be in December. We're hoping that they'll be in December. Unfortunately, that kind of puts a wrinkle in the equipment that we had ordered for the Dodge Durango, but we're hoping that with our supplier, we can return that. Unfortunately, Chrysler canceled 9,000 Dodge Durango orders, so I don't think we're the only ones returning police equipment. And lastly is police radio for Chief Speake's vehicle. That vehicle was a DEA vehicle, it had a DEA radio in it, so it never had a Brentwood police radio in it. This is just simply to replace that radio.
So next is Public Works, and Dan, I don't know if you can actually see the presentation if you have pulled it up at home, but can you go through your stuff?
Yeah, from what I remember, I know we have signs, typical signs in there. We ordered those depending on whatever the need is. Those typically don't exceed, the 500 threshold unless we get multiple signs. And then I know we have equipment, so that would be just things that wear and tear, whether it's hoses or, saw blades, like for the pavement saws, things of that nature. The things that I know that we've used, Sourcewell or a cooperative like Eric spoke of, last year we purchased the Sanitation truck 2 replacement. That was through Sourcewell. And then whenever we purchased like some of those speed cushions, TAPCO has a partnership. They're the preferred bidder for our different traffic control devices, for traffic calming. So I know we've used that. And then whenever we do streets, of course, that's competitively bid. So that's open to the public. Anybody that's a contractor that can do concrete and asphalt, that's a competitive bid process. Those were like the major categories that I remember putting in there. There's probably 1 or 2 that I'm forgetting.
Yeah, Danny did great. I think the only thing you forgot was the SDP improvements on Russell, and obviously that will be competitively bid as well. Not only that, Dad,
Oh,
you went in order of the presentation. That was very impressive. So for Parks
I
and
know. I
Rec,
was trying to think how I expected it.
so Parks and Recs for this year, we
Good
have
deal.
a couple projects and then some equipment repairs or equipment replacements. So the first is the storm sewer and creek bank repair in the Brentwood Sports Complex. It's at the end of the parking lot. If you go down there, there's a big hill or a big hole basically going down to Deer Creek. So obviously this will be competitively bid. In fact, the bid went out last week, so it should be hopefully coming to Public Works in the next month. We also have the Hanley Park Comfort Station and parking lot expansion design. This was in the budget because it was a multi-year project, and this was actually already approved by the board in 2021. So this is just a continuation of that contract. The Memorial Park Bridge replacement, again, this is something that will have to be competitively bid. It will be going out hopefully in the next couple of weeks as far as getting that done. We have all the design work done. And then the equipment includes a bunker cart, which is basically used to prepare our baseball and softball fields. Our bunker cart is, I think, 5 years past replacement, so it's getting pretty old, and we really need another one to get it down there. We usually replace a lawnmower every year or other year, just to make sure that we have all of them working. And we've been moving to electric as our sustainability goals for the city. And that's something that we can get off the state contract. Truck 59, this was actually in the budget last year, and much like what Major talked about, we ordered it in September. We ordered it in June. We were told in September there's no way it was going to get done for that last fiscal year. It came in February, so we had bumped it to this year. We just got the body, now we have to put the bed on there, so we probably won't actually take possession of the truck for another month or two. So that's kind of the same situation that everyone's kind of going through right now with chain supply issues. And then a new gator which we can do on the state contract. So we're trying to get a couple of these things spaced out, although it's for Brentwood Park, we'll use it. But again, the idea is not to have everything in Brentwood Park come up on the same year in future years. So we're trying to space things out. So that's kind of a quick look at the capital purchases for this year. Again, the finance recommendation was to move to the new spending limits. And if you have any questions.
In looking at the memo, did we settle on these amounts previously in 2019? I just didn't remember.
Yes. Yeah, what happened was it got approval from from Ways and Means, and it never went forward. I can't tell you why. I know there was discussion about starting it with the next fiscal year, and maybe it kind of lost track with the finance director at the time. But this is just something that I know for myself is something I wanted to push this year to make sure that we have something that's hopefully a little bit more usable for staff.
I had another question. What are some of the internal controls that, I know we have a whole process, but yeah, my concern is, okay, we lift the bar, and it just so happens that a majority of the things purchased fall under the $2,500 mark. Everyone gets that you've got to take a $500,000 project out to a competitive bid, but I get the logic. My concern weighted against that is sometimes government is meant to go slow, and I know it's inefficient, but how do we address the concern or the questions I'm expecting to get that while raising it up to that amount, lots of things fall under $2,500, and when you add them all up.
So yeah, if you're talking specifically under the $2,500, and I'll let Robin help me with this one as well, is for me, and I'll speak very specifically for me, is that our department runs financial reports every month, much like the ones you just get. And my job and my superintendent's jobs are to go through those and make sure that we're on track and that all the spending is kind of within what we expect to see. And then secondarily, we see the finance report come to Ways and Means every month. And so that's kind of a secondary aspect for the board to kind of see not only what staff is doing behind the scenes, because I'm assuming every other department's doing something very similar to what I'm doing, but also for the committee to make sure that we're all kind of, kind of following everything properly. Ryan, what else am I missing? Putting you on the spot.
No, no worries. We still have the process by which we have to present items $2,000 or more to the board for approval through the warrant list. One of the triggers that I used in my past career in government, when you see so many items coming in right underneath the threshold, as you indicated, yes, that's a conversation and a concern, because you want to have a closer look at those things just to make sure that people aren't bypassing the processes and procedures we have in place for internal controls. But we do have a checkpoint, and that's the warrant list.
In terms of supporting documentation, as they route it through finance and the city administrator's office for signature. And ultimately, even though it might be after the fact, when the audit is done, the auditors do selectively pull these invoices to make sure that the city or staff has been in compliance with our internal controls procedures.
Yeah, one of the other things I forgot is, at least in my department, again, I'm assuming it happens in everyone else's department, but all check requests come through my desk for signature. And so all purchases come through me. I review those to make sure, one, that they're kind of in line with what I expect them to be. Two, that some of the basic stuff like account numbers and things like that are correct. And then it'll go to finance. They'll do the very similar check of those check requests. They'll catch all the incorrect accounts that I missed and make me feel really bad. And we'll get that all tightened up. As we move, hopefully, future with the new financial software that we can actually do the PO system online, you can actually encumber, this will be great, because you can actually encumber purchases, and as you do that, then it will actually decrease the amount of your budget even before you pay the check. So that way, if let's say my budget line was $2,000 and I had one check for $1,500, I would not be able to create a purchase order for something over $500 without approval from probably the director, the finance director, and most likely, I'm not sure if it goes all the way up to BOLA, but so that's coming down the line, we hope, this year, and something I'm terribly excited about, because you can encumber stuff right away and have a better track for your budget instead of even those monthly financial reports that we do. I'm a big believer of making sure our budgets are good.
I'm looking at your memo or the memo. Is this new setup consistent with the other cities? I mean, I'm seeing you identify Clayton, Kirkwood, Maplewood, Richmond Heights. I know the comment was that we are currently the least restrictive, but if we move forward on this, are we kind of?
Yeah, I mean, we'd be right in line. I know Clayton is, I mean, we're just off the top of my head, I remember Clayton was like 25,000 for capital purchases, and that's not big. I think most people are around the 2,000 to 5,000 mark for most expedient way possible, and then somewhere in between those marks and 20 to 30,000 with capital. So we'd be right in line with pretty much all the other municipalities that we are comparables municipalities.
Yeah, you asked one of my questions, so that's good. The items that you guys went through, those numbers are consistent with what we had in the budget book from months ago, right? Are we still confident that with increases of costs, I mean, I know automobiles have increased 40 to 60%, in the last couple of months?
There's no certainty, but if there are increases, we will have to bring them back to you, because the only way we would be looking to purchase those items would possibly be through savings elsewhere, or through a budget amendment. So ultimately, it will be routed back here.
Okay. And then on some of those, I know one of the questions I believe that Alderwoman Tice had the last time we talked about this and wanted to make sure that we're sort of looking at it is changing the policy mid-budget year and not, not accounting for what we might have accounted for during that budget year. And one of the ask, I think, was how many of our expenditure items are currently under the 24, let's say 2,500 mark, that we would then, what's the number of that, to Alderwoman Sims's point? And I don't know that we could go back and look, but the big question that I have is, for example, like ballistic vest, for example, is it one-time purchase for that $15,300, or is one of the vests under 2,500 and you buy them on an as-needed basis, and then, you'll get to that without having approval and all that if you buy one at a time?
That's a
curious.
good question. So the reason we're buying 18, we've hired, I think in the last 4 years, 10 new police officers. These are the police officers that were hired at least 5 years ago. So the ballistic vests their useful life is 5 years. The useful life on those ballistic vests technically ended December 31st of 2021. So each vest is through the county's purchase. We just piggyback on what the county already bid, and they're $825 through their price.
Okay.
I think the retail price is somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,100. So we only buy them every 5 years, and we actually have a chart as to when they come up. I get an email, or I've set up a notification system. So this big purchase is the bulk of, we'll probably have maybe ones and twos in the next 2 or 3 years. That's kind of how this, when their vest is up, when the useful life is up, then that's when we replace them. Did I answer?
Yeah, and I'm not picking on the vest, but by all means, I want the vests.
I want those to expire.
I want those to be safe, right? It was more of an example. Like when we look at these budget items and we see a big number of the budget, are those multiple items that add up to that budget that are purchased one at a time?
When there are multiple items, they are presented in this manner. And things that fall in that category are big ticket items like body armor, vest, turnout gear for the fire department. And that includes, what does that include? The helmet, the gloves, the boots, everything. You can speak to that. I don't know that there are other items throughout other departments.
So
that fall into
my
that
example for that, Alderman Gould, would be, so the operating portion of the fire department budget minus things that already happen, payroll, overtime, benefits, there's transactions that already happen for that. I have about 300,000, maybe a little bit more. At least 75% of that money falls under $2,500. It's just those regular purchases we do on a weekly basis, repairs, just to keep business rolling.
Alderman Tice?
So I think, other than Sunny, we're all new since this was discussed. I think this was the meeting before I was sworn in, so this is new to all of us. And I'm kind of back on this question that Alderman Gould just asked about other cities. I think I'm generally supportive of this. The thought of going out for $500 when you're trying to get a car part, it costs more, it seems sort of crazy. But could we see the chart that was made in 2019 about the other municipalities to sort of just get a better feel for that we're in line with them? And then what sort of I guess we could do this at any time, but could an elected official drop in and look through the paperwork and sort of just get more comfort with this? Again, I think I'm generally comfortable with it, but I just want to make sure there's.
Actually, we have done that in the past.
Okay.
An elected official did come in to look at all our check requests and whatever else, and what that requires. I'm sure you're going to understand it. But what we had to do then is the finance director at the time had to sit with the person and explain everything they were looking at. And sunshine that or you can just come in and look at it. It's city records, so.
We're going to give Kelly more work.
Sorry, Kelly. That will, we'll make that available, absolutely.
So these purchases would otherwise appear on the warrant list? I mean,
If
is that
they're-
an additional check?
So right now, there's two lists. There's things that are over 2,000 appear on the warrant list, and then things that are under that appear on the check request that we put in the weekly report. But,
But we
you know,
see everything. We
It's
just,
after the
Fair.
fact that you
Yeah.
see it.
but we do see it in the weekly report, so we have access to everything. So
Right.
we're, yeah.
And in the past, you know, I've had older persons come in and want to know, well, what is this? What was purchased? Explain it to me. And most things I can explain, and if I can't, I ask them to help me out.
No, you're actually going back to the meeting, which
Are
I
you-
could have done myself, but thank you for.
I thought I had it. I thought it was in here. Here it is. Nope.
If you're
Oh, there it is.
referencing it.
Again, there's actually 2 years old data. How do I expand this? Let me figure that out.
Up in the middle.
There it is. Thank you. So it looks like Maplewood was at $2,500 or less. Richmond Heights and Clayton were at 5,000 or less, could do it without any quotes. 5,000 was 3 quotes minimum. Richmond Heights. 25 was their biggest one. And again, this was done obviously by the previous finance director, and so I'm sure if you want, we can go get more up-to-date data.
If I could keep talking, I generally feel like it's reasonable, and especially with the inflation that's been going on and the scarcity of items and the fact that we do have ability to, we see the checks, they are after the fact, but we see them and can exercise our prerogative to look through them.
And we can exercise our prerogative to,
That we can.
that happens, but if we found that this was getting away from us. All right, are there other questions? Do you feel like, is there any additional information that you feel like you'd like to look at before, taking a vote on this, or? Seeing none, all right, so, I guess at this point, Chair would, entertain a motion to, reaffirm the, recommendation from 2019 to revise the City of Brentwood Purchasing Code, as set forth in the memo that was attached to, agenda, and forward the new purchasing limits to the Board of Aldermen for their approval.
So moved.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion by Alderwoman Tice, a second by Alderman Gould. Do we have any further discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Gould,
Yes.
Alderman Shelton.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Motion carries. I voted 4-0.
Great. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda, we're moving on to new business. Section 8A is the healthcare coverage premium for the fiscal year 2023 and 2023 plan year.
All right. This is just more kind of like a annual process, if you will. In the years past, every time that we have had a rate increase, we have typically passed the appropriate portion along to the employee populace. That's what this memo basically just indicates for calendar year, plan year 22-23. We are seeing a slightly larger rate increase of 7%. Years past has been between 2 and 4%. I believe another document had been included in the packet that showed all the way back to 2009 the various rate increases that we've seen through that time frame. The current plan year is the grid under the recommendation portion is the first grid. The secondary grid would be what the proposal would be. I'm just looking for guidance from the committee to send this on to the full board so that this can be passed along when I do the annual enrollment, which would be in June for a July 1 effective date.
So just if I'm understanding it correctly, we would keep our percentage payments the same, or we would do what we have done in the past, except for as things are want to happen in healthcare, the rates for 2023 or 2022, 23 have gone up. And
Correct.
so we just want to.
Yes, ma'am. So what we've always done, or what the city has always done, has basically covered the employee only at 100% and then picked up 50% of the remainder. So where the employee populace would see an increase to their premiums would be anyone that has supplemental coverage. So coverage on spouse, children, or family coverage, that percentage would go up appropriately at the 7%, which again is reflected in that grid.
Questions? So do you need a motion from us to do that, or?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I guess I'll entertain a motion to approve the proposed health insurance rates for 2022, 2023 as set forth in the memo dated April 8, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, roll call.
Chairwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Shelton.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 4-0.
Great. Next item on the agenda is 8B, the quarterly report of ambulance fee write-offs.
Indeed. So to add slightly more to the background, we are going to experience some language changes to our contract in next year for ambulance billing due to some technology changes. Our reporting software is changing. Currently, it's included in this contract. Reviewing document language, this item is to be brought forth on a quarterly basis. So we're bringing it forward. So the first quarter, 2022, the write-offs in total $17,876.54. The report that is provided by EMS MC is a very high-level report. So under the bad debt, which encompasses the most, that includes uncollectibles due to death, a whole host of reasons, including residents, which we do not collect that portion. So this is a reflection of everything that Brentwood is saying we're no longer pursuing.
Alderman Tice.
So can I clarify? So we don't attempt to collect from residents, but is that now lumped into bad debt? Or the way that EMS
It's just
does this?
the report to show the write-off of that amount if we were able to pursue that. So meaning, I just want to clarify your question, meaning residents will receive a bill if all the information's not provided, but once proper information is provided, the insurance receives the bill and makes payment, the rest is done.
So I guess to understand, so if your ambulance came to my house and my insurance paid and then I still owed like $1,000, Brentwood pays that for our citizens.
Brentwood writes that off.
Brentwood writes that off, or it doesn't pay it, but it writes it off.
Correct.
And so this
Correct.
bad debt number includes
Correct.
citizens and people from other municipalities
Non-citizens.
or non-citizens who
Yes, ma'am.
are in that. Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
yes.
Other questions?
I just have a quick question on that. Is that if a person used it multiple times in a year, is that a resident, it's not just a one-time
Correct.
write-off?
It doesn't change.
Okay.
Yes. And we see that.
Okay.
We do need a motion to approve.
Yeah, I guess at this
Yeah.
point, I'll entertain a motion to direct staff to present the write-off with a positive recommendation from the Ways and Means Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Second, sorry.
Okay.
Tired. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Shelton.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Motion carries. Vote is 4-0.
Okay, next item on the agenda is 8C, Gov Deals Asset Sales Change Request. Who's got that?
Kyle,
Online? Yes.
I got that. I'll take it, Dan. Hey, everyone. You got it?
I was giving it to you.
All right, I'll take it. Hey, so I'll just make it real simple here. I'm in charge of selling most of the assets here for the city, including the vehicles and everything. It's kind of cumbersome. Meaning that when we list it, it's kind of like the eBay process on Gov Deals. We list it, we get a bevy of bidders. They come along, bid it, and then they have to come to us to pay us. And then we have to send, we have to collect all the funds, the titles, hand over the titles and everything else. And then we got to send the funds over to Gov Deals, and then Gov Deals sends the money back to us. The way that it's going to have to change, though, we were just told today, basically, that Gov Deals is now going to request that anybody that uses their service, that the buyer, the bidder, actually will have to pay Gov Deals directly, and then Gov Deals will just cut us a check, which in turn is kind of what we want, because it will save us tons of money, tons of time, and it'll open up the bidding process to a lot more people. So therefore, we'll probably get more in return for our assets that we are selling. Does that make sense?
Here is on Public Works. Is that Nancy or you? Okay, you two. Did this, I don't forget, did you all run the trap sufficiently on this matter, or? No, but like, you said Public Works is, so was it?
Public Works
Did I make
Department.
the incorrect assumption when they said Public Works in the memo, that meant the Public Works Committee?
No, it meant the department.
Okay, I didn't wanna, wanting to learn from past events, that I wanted to be sure that to the extent.
No,
Public
the
Works
reason why
Committee
this
was
is
reviewing
here,
this, it
it's a
wasn't.
means.
Okay.
Right, it's the collecting of the money, dispersing of the money to Gov Deals finance, and then releasing the item that is purchased, which is probably an item that we've defined as surplus, and there's a monetary value, so it all goes through Ways and Means.
Could I just clarify that I understand this correctly? So we already pay Gov Deals, like I think it was, you said, the memo said 7%. So we currently pay Gov Deals. We're still gonna be paying Gov Deals, but they're gonna do all the administrative stuff that our staff has currently been doing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. It sounds like a great new arrangement to me.
Yeah, me too.
Think.
Any questions?
Memo, or do we need a memo? Do we need a motion?
Yes, please.
I guess the chair would entertain a motion to approve Gov Deals asset sales change request as set forth in the memo attached to the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Chairwoman, excuse me, Chairwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Shelton.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 4-0.
Great, thank you, Kyle. Next item on the agenda is item 8D, the fiscal year 2021 budget amendment.
Good evening again. Well, to start, I'm ready to present the 2021 budget amendment in accordance with the municipal code. So while our finances have remained steady and stable, we have had some negative impacts. And due to those impacts, we would like to present the departments that require a budget amendment. But first, I want to give a little information from the memo. Most departments operated very well with the 2021 budget. However, we did have some departments that experienced challenges due to the rising cost of goods and services, including solid waste disposal fees, petroleum fuel, and Public Works overtime expenditures, not to put that department on the spot, but with the turnover and having to borrow workers between streets and sanitation, as well as pay staff that were part-time to work full-time hours to help us get things done for the city. So those are some of the reasons for the overruns. So I'll go into the general fund. Administration has a budget amendment to present in the amount of $78,925 that is directly attributed to the accounting audit service contract overrun. And there's funding available in the full-time and part-time salary line and employee benefits to cover the shortfalls. Municipal operating had a budget of 1.7 million, expenses of 1.8 million, went over by $152,329. This was due to short funding of our information technology contract with the city of Clayton. I am making notes as we go through the current budget year so that when we are in preparation for 2023, that we have that expense represented more in line with the actual cost so that we don't have this issue again. Police seizure. For 2021, there was a budget of 0, but they had expenses of $2,487, bringing them over by that same amount. There is $8,708 available in funding to rectify this, as they were able to sell a seized vehicle in 2021 to cover that expense. Sanitation is mentioned. Their budget was $574,200. They had expenses of $577,533. They're over $3,333. And that is due to overruns on full and part-time salaries due to staff turnover. And petroleum products and solid waste disposal was mentioned in my introduction. I'm going to take a break right there. Any questions? Yes.
Yes, on the administration one, you talked about budget coming from full-time and part-time budget. Does that mean that there are positions that still need to be hired that are being closed so that we can fund these shortfalls, or are those?
Last year.
Okay.
In finance. So two different things.
Okay.
Yeah. So the funding, there, Alderman, we did have a part-time salary allocated for a finance position that we never filled.
So that's the money that you're going to then use for the
Yes.
shortfall.
And then we had some savings also because we had a few vacancies, and then including the time that there was no finance director as well. So that's the information for the general fund. Moving on to economic development fund, we had unbudgeted administrative fees to UMB, and those were in the amount, that was in the amount of $3,175. That's the only shortfall we had in Fund 41. Parks and stormwater. There is not a budget amendment. It's only an accounting transfer to make sure that we truly represent the correct expense source. So we have the 2018 COPS and the 2019 COPS, and then we have the other source of Brentwood bound funding, which are the grants that we get from Great Rivers Greenway and MSD. And so for total Brentwood bound, there's a budget of $31 million. However, we expended about $9.4 million strictly for 2018 COPS. So what we like to do is take those expenses, reduce the budget by those expenses, and then move the remaining $22 million into 2019 COPS, because that's what we're using to fund Brentwood Bound right now. In addition to that, we spent $2.7 million in other funding for Brentwood Bound, and so we need to reduce 2019 COPS by that amount. So these are just accounting transfers that will show in the general ledger where the source of funding for those expenses are being paid for. Any questions about that? I know it's a lot, but we just want to be able to truly represent where the budget lines are. The last amendment for 2021 has to do with the general fund and capital improvement fund transfers to restore the stormwater and parks improvement funds as proposed in a memo dated December 2nd, 2021, related to fiscal 2022 budget amendments. So for the general fund, we'd like to transfer 1.5 million to Stormwater and Parks Fund, and also transfer $1 million from the Capital Improvement Fund to Stormwater and Parks Fund for a total transfer of 2.5 million. And this is staff's recommendation for the budget amendment for the 2021 adopted budget.
I shared this in a memo during the budget process, so we're restoring all those funds to those two funds.
Alderman Tice?
And Bola, on that, so now that's completely restored?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I get, at this point, Chair will entertain a motion to budget amendment for the 2021 adopted budget and to move on to the board for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we had a motion by Alderman Gould and a second by Alderman Shelton. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Shelton.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Motion carries by vote of 4-0.
Great, thank you. Next item on the agenda is 8E, fiscal year 2022 budget amendment. Got that.
Same application, following the rules from the municipal code. We have discussed the 2022 budget amendment, along with the use of the second disbursement of the American Rescue Act plan that the city is expecting to receive. There has been some indication from staff that they would like to use the incoming funds to restore some of the capital improvement items that were removed from the 2022 budget. However, at the present time, we don't have a definitive date. I'm repeating some of the information I shared earlier. So without having those funds available to continue the conversation, we can't plan a course of action for spending. So at this time, staff recommends that the 2022 budget amendment not be done at this time.
We'll bring it back later.
So you don't need any action
No,
from us?
information only.
Okay, great. And I'm assuming that doesn't pose any
No.
heartburn to
No.
anyone to
Shouldn't.
put that off? Okay. All right. Item 8F is the continued discussion of request for proposal of insurance services consulting report.
Last year, the board met with Charlesworth, and they had indicated that they would be available to help the city go to market to determine whether our quotes were being competitive. But sometime in the past 2 months, they lost 2 of the 4 employees with the firm. So they're not willing to take on any additional work at this time. As a matter of fact, Slate wanted to hire them as well to help us develop a metrics to evaluate the new administrator, and they declined that as well. So, and when we went, I don't know if Jason's still here, when we went to, issued an RFP soliciting those in the business that could help us, they were the only ones that really responded. So I'm just sharing that information with you. I don't know what further direction you want to give me on that.
How is it they're the only ones in
That responded?
in the game? I mean, is there something specific that we have to look local? Is there a national? I mean, I don't want to, put the, cart before the horse, because I think this kind of dovetails into the next item on the agenda, but I guess it just confounds me that someone would turn away business. I mean, so we're currently without really, let's say even, and I'm not saying that we do come to this conclusion, but if we did want to further evaluate or change insurance, we don't have an expert at the moment that could help us do that. Is that?
We don't.
We don't.
But we've been talking about that on the Slate board and have asked Thomas McGee that when they present our quotes, not this year, but for next year, that they need to be able to indicate to the members just how competitive the quotes they're getting back are. So, but when Slate went out to market looking for someone to do this as well, Charles, it's been a couple of years, maybe 2017 maybe, they were the only ones that responded as well. And when we put that notice out, I want to say nationwide.
I'm kind of not sure what kind of direction to give you on that one until we address what are we going to generally do about.
Well, yeah, I have a question, but I don't know if
Yeah,
it
go
falls
ahead.
under this one or the next topic, so I can wait. I mean,
I'm not going to stand on formality.
well, I guess my sort of general question for Slate is, we obviously want to be sure that we're getting adequate insurance coverage on all our lines. And Slate has switched companies. So is the new insurance broker doing that kind of in-depth analysis that they will then share with us?
Well, they're doing that and sharing it with the staff who make the renewals for each one.
So presumably we might see some of our insurance coverage change or
go up. The premiums may go up. They tend to go up. They don't necessarily go down.
Well, I'm less concerned about the actual cost of the premiums than the amount of coverage. So are they going to then look and say, oh, this you were over here and they said you needed $1,000 of coverage. We think you need $10,000 of coverage.
They provide us those options. Okay. And the decision process is what are others doing and what is the risk and what would the recommendations be. So when they present those options, for instance, to me, I talk to others. I think this board has had a conversation about sales tax interruption. So, okay, are there any other municipalities out there that have coverage? I think there are maybe 2 or 3, and those 3 thought they had coverage during COVID and are suing to get coverage because there was none. So there's different things like that. There's also cybersecurity. That's, everybody's talking about that a lot. And should we up our coverage by $1 million? So it's now a total of 3 versus 2. So in those instances, I talk to Larry, and then we talk about what others are doing, and we leave it at that present value. So we are assessing those internally. I'm not necessarily bringing it to the board, but I could if you want.
So, like, is cyber, we get it through Slate, I guess, they're the buckets with Slate. So there's some things that all the municipalities have the same coverage. So I guess I'm probably more concerned about those because like cyber, isn't that? That's separate.
Right.
So we could make a choice on cyber and have more coverage.
Have more coverage.
But if there's, help me out with another line of coverage, the,
Public officials,
Fire
errors
and
and omissions.
casualty,
yeah.
Liability.
Or,
So I think police liability is part of,
Is that fire and
Is-
casualty, or is
it's,
that just general?
no, well,
Is that
just liability in general.
those didn't under-
So,
So I guess my question on those is, that's a general slate policy. So if we felt like we wanted additional coverage,
we could
we
increase
could
that.
go out and buy it, but, or,
Exactly, it would be part of the quote for the renewal if we want a higher limit. So the
so we
direction.
could get higher limits
Yeah.
on certain lines, but
Right.
we just don't have an expert to help us know what we should have higher limits, what we might want to have higher limits on, I guess.
Well, so in my mind, the experts are Thomas McGee.
Okay.
Because they know the market and they're seeing the claims.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the recommendation will come from.
Okay. And would they ever recommend something different for different municipalities? Like, or could they say, you know, we recommend, you know, $1 million coverage. Some municipalities might want to buy supplemental for two. I mean, is that going to?
There are those who have higher limits for different things. I couldn't give you a good example right now because I don't remember. It's not apples, you know, it's not the same across the board.
Okay.
So it just depends on the experience that that community has had. And it's all driven based on claims, you know, claims history. So, but the example I gave you was cyber. And because I know that in the past, maybe 2 years, there have been communities in the Lake area that actually have had ransom attacks where they had to pay. But, you know, we've pushed out through IT the Know Before programs and opportunities to make sure that we don't, you know, fall prey. So, and I've attended webinars where folks from the FBI continue to talk about if things happen, don't pay, call us, you know, we'll come in and help. And then there's the instance of where you're constantly backing up. So, but there's opportunity to increase those limits, and we look at that during renewal and rely on data that Thomas McGee is sharing, and sometimes it's our staff.
Our renewal, like when do we
So
have to
we've
give
been,
notice?
we've been doing renewals all along.
But I recall, isn't there some date by which we have to give a notice?
It was January.
So this just seems to be such an issue for some on the board. And I'm wondering if just giving us more information about maybe that, I don't know if it's a separate workshop or we have a time at a Ways and Means meeting where you actually come and say, okay, let's take workers' comp. And old company said this, new company says this. We agree, just to show us that Thomas McGee is doing something different than Daniel and Henry. I don't know what the right answer to get through this is, but we don't have an outside expert. None of us are really experts, but I feel like we have to rely somewhat on this insurance company to help us.
Right. I mean, and you bring a good point. So we just had a slate board meeting last week where we had a actuarial report that was done for the projected ultimate losses for specific policy years. Policy year 1995-96, 2008, 2009, 21, 22, where the ultimate forecasted losses were higher last year. And when they're higher, our fund balance limit also is greater. So the actuarial report that came back shows that the ultimate loss forecast is less, which means the fund balance difference is less now by 500,000. So those are some of the changes that Thomas McGee is bringing forward. And we continue to talk about what can we do to ultimately erase that negative fund balance. And I don't think I included this in this board packet, but we now have a report that shows how much each member city would owe for that workers' compensation fund balance that's less. So because we're in this COVID recovery and there are municipalities that are still dealing with significant revenue loss, even with the ARPA funds, even with the CARES fund, we don't feel that now is an appropriate time to say we want to do it a special assessment to erase all of that. But there's also a very positive fund balance in healthcare. Healthcare is the one coverage that is doing really great. And because it's doing really great for a particular year, we're able to provide surplus back to the member cities. So this year, the analysis is that we have 500,000 that we can give back to the member cities. So we, at some point, we think that the recommendation will be that instead of distributing those surpluses, that we begin to use that to offset the loss that we're seeing in workers' comp. So it's a process. It's not something that can easily be fixed in 1 year, because the years where we saw the significant liability in workers' comp, I think there's a total of 6 years where we saw significant workers' compensation loss. The 2021 year, and Brentwood was part of that because we had someone out for COVID for most of the year. Then there was 2019, 2017, 2016, 2015, 2014, and 2011. So those are the years, a total of 7 years that contributed to this liability that we now have to address. And even if you leave Slate, and we just this year had one municipality leave, the board directed Thomas McGee to send them a letter that even though you are no longer part of Slate, you are still responsible for that liability. And if at any point we decide we want to assess it, you will have to pay up.
What municipality left?
I think it was, is it Fenton or Eureka? I don't remember. But there was, I could get you that name. There was one municipality that left.
I know we're straddling maybe two different items on here, but to back up to item F where we talk about Charlesworth Consulting, it seems like they're declining to do this, and they're the only, player in the game, is predicated in the fact that they don't have the staffing to do it. I mean, my guidance would say obviously we need to probably keep in contact with them and make sure that when they do have position filled and they're able to potentially consider the project again, maybe that's when we talk about it again,
I served on another subcommittee of the Slate board that the board wanted clarification on what they could do for Slate. So I talked to James frequently, so we can definitely make sure we keep.
Yeah, I'm sure they're not building a business based on turning down business, right? So they're,
so they've turned out two
maybe
now.
things change when they staff up again, and we can take
And that's
this
what
up
he
at that
said.
time.
He hopes to be able to, he's going to take him time to fill those two positions. And until then, I'm sure he'll even reach out to me when he's fully staffed and we can go down this road. Again, the cost isn't that significant. I think it was like $4,000 or something like that.
What about the fact that it concerns me that the person we would be hiring to evaluate our Slate insurance has been retained by Slate Insurance to help them?
It's different. And also though, I think what he told me was it depends on what he was proposing to do for Slate. If what he wanted to do was what Slate wanted him to do, he would decline this job. So he wouldn't take both. And what he wanted Slate to hire him to do was so significant, he would have definitely turned down our project.
Does he have anyone that he would recommend in the alternative?
I can ask him.
I mean, I push business to lawyers all the time. If it's not my, sorry, buddy, I can't help you, but.
I can ask him. He hasn't offered that up, but I can ask him.
I mean, they can't be the only game in town. I mean, it
I think
boggles my mind.
sometimes do you, and I'm speculating here, I don't know, do you take work, I don't know how much work it would require to do what we're asking him to do for little money? When there are other, and you know this, Jeff, there are other projects out there that might bring you greater income? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. Let's
don't
go
know.
find, if we're not his whale, let's go find, let's be someone's, shark. Or, I mean, like, or, terrapin. I don't know.
I
Like,
will ask him tomorrow.
But there isn't really action that we can take at this time. At this point,
No,
he's
it's
turned us
information,
down, and
right.
and we have to figure out a solution one way or the other, depending on how we decide to go forward. Okay, then, so to end the straddle, we are able to, I guess, move on to 8G, which is on the agenda, which is the St. Louis area, which is still a slate issue. I got an email from Alderman Plufka. He was asking generally for, where are we on our slate analysis? And I just asked that it be put on the agenda for further discussion. There isn't something for you to consider, but what's the plan of attack in terms of, what, if anything, do we want to do? I know that, echoing what you said, Alderman Tice, that there are people on our board who are concerned about insurance, and I want to adequately not only address their concerns, but the public, to make sure that our insurance is competitive and robust and, serves our needs. So I'm not exactly sure where to begin, question-wise, except I do recall it when we were taking this up previously. Wasn't Slate in the process of kind of reevaluating and making some changes in light of claims that had come in? That sticks up in my memory. Was there? You're looking at me as, I don't know. I mean, they were.
Thomas McGee, and that's some of the things I just mentioned earlier
Okay.
about reducing the liability. Jason presented the health insurance earlier. We have new members, well, not members, we have municipalities who want to join Slate. And I won't mention any names. We just turned a municipality down because their claims history for health was at 15%. And when they go for their renewal, it could even be higher. So we look at 3 years of history and determine what kind of risk they would present for other members. So it's not every city that wants to become a member of Slate that's allowed in. So we are looking at changes gradually, and I've reported on a number of them tonight.
Are any of those concluded? I mean, is there a deliverable we can look at in terms of they met, they conferred, they decided, they've moved on? I mean,
I can share the actual report that I referenced tonight. I have that. So that's one. And you have the health information.
Well, what about
So-
liability? That seems to
so-
stick up in most people's craw the most.
So workers' compensation
Or general liability.
or general
yeah.
liability? What about general liability?
Well, are we sufficiently covered in the event of, a class action lawsuit, any other kind of loss?
Well, so it has been the belief, and I think this board that has been shared with this board multiple times, that due to sovereign immunity, you are excluded for class action lawsuit, at least, and that continues to be Slate's position at this time.
Well, I guess maybe rephrase. I meant more in the terms of police and not elected officials. I tend to agree with you on that.
Well, I meant police because of the Ferguson matter. That's what I was referring to. Not elected officials.
Okay, I guess I was confused. by
I don't think you all could be, well, you all could be part of a class, but I'm not aware of that, yeah.
So is the conclusion of Slate then that, sovereign immunity, we don't have to worry about class action lawsuits filed against all of our police?
It's not filed against police, it was filed against the court system and how those municipalities were handling their courts at the time. We didn't we haven't been sued. We're not part of any class action group out there because the way we operated our court system was much different than others. So I'm not sure I'm following the question because I don't know if I'm giving you the right answer.
It has been voiced to me in the past of a concern from others on the board about the exposure, you know, of class action lawsuits, to use an example, that multiple police respond to an event from from neighboring municipalities who, for whatever reason, they get sued. And here we have a bunch of Slate members being sued, and everybody responded to the shooting that happened at the Metrolink. I mean, so I'm just saying, I'm using that as an example. I mean, that's not out of the realm of the possible. And I want to address those questions adequately. That here's what we're doing.
So you're talking about a matter that's still pending, that's in court, that's still pending, that hasn't been resolved.
No, I'm not talking about a specific example. If I did that,
Well,
I
you
did
just did. You just did.
I mean, okay, but is that? I mean, I don't think I'm betraying a confidence.
Because we update you on that in closed session.
But no, I did not mean to mention that. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Okay, then good.
But I mean, but the multiple claims that are arising out of
You know, when something happens, whether it's a shooting or not, obviously, whoever decides to sue will, and we have mutual aid, you know, and we all show up to these scenes. So it makes sense that when they file a lawsuit, they name multiple municipalities. But it's and then we turn that claim over to our insurance carrier. They select an attorney, and then the attorney starts working through how do we get that dismissed and that dismissed and that dismissed, and ultimately, possibly without going to court, the matter is resolved. So that's how it works.
No, I understand how insurance claims work and litigation, but the point is, do we have enough insurance? Do we have enough excess insurance? Have we gone through the process so I can say to people who ask me, the citizens or other members of the board, we ran the traps on this thing.
This committee has been talking about this for I don't know how long.
But I don't think we've ever gotten a resolution. I mean, I feel like things kinda left off.
I just think the members that aren't on this committee maybe don't agree with the information we share. We've talked about maybe getting excess insurance. I think that was voted down on this committee. So, I mean, I can pull up all the videos because I don't think the minutes accurately capture that level of detail. So do we want to go back and get quotes for excess insurance and bring that back to the committee so you all can vote on it again? We've gone down that path and it failed. Asking for excess insurance quotes. We've done that.
Yeah, I made the motion and I didn't even get a second on that one. Can I, so I've spent I mean, I even went back and read all the Slate minutes or the Slate bylaws from when it got created. I dove so deeply into this. And I feel like what we're really missing is the Charlesworth analysis that we were trying to talk about in number F, or letter F, that I think if we could get that from Charlesworth or someone else, that would set many minds at ease. I am heartened that Slate made a change in their administrator. I don't know quite what the right term for the company that they work with. The original company had proposed it. They had been the Slate company for years, and I'm really glad that there's a new company looking at all the Slate coverages and analyzing them. And so maybe if we could get some, that's what I sort of was suggesting earlier.
And meet with the board. If you could give me a good sense of what some of the questions are. So, I mean, I think he could walk in here and talk about anything, but I'd like to, you know, kind of let him know exactly where the questions are going to come up. John Sharpie, I could ask him to come in and meet. And if you remember, we brought Steve Wicker, we brought George Lyos, we brought Becky Redfern. So we brought different people from Daniel Henry to the committee, this Ways and Means Committee, to have a discussion. So if you would like John to come back in and talk to you all about different things, I'm happy to do that as well.
It might be helpful if we crafted a long list of questions before we have him come. And then if you could get the answer on the Charlesworth competitor or alternative, I think that would certainly set people's minds at ease. But I'm personally not ready to make a change out of slate when they have a new administrator. I feel like they're being very responsible now in what they're looking at, and if we had any help, if we helped push that, then good for us. If we didn't help push that, good for us anyway.
Take credit. Take credit.
Other questions? So I guess at this point, in terms of having that gentleman come back, and then in advance, so I know that so everyone's question can put a question to paper, and that can at least be evaluated, so we have someone that can address concerns and
I think he will do an excellent job in answering questions that you all pose, but it would be nice to have those questions beforehand.
absolutely, I think that makes the
And, you know,
discussion
he
far
can
more
join by
productive.
Zoom. He lives in Kansas City, so.
Yeah, I mean, so everyone will know ahead of time if they want to, ask this person questions, they'll be heard. And yeah, to the extent to hopefully there's someone else out there that might want our meager business, in terms of other issues on that topic. All right, item 9, citizen comments. Anyone in the gallery or online would like to come forward and address the board, our committee, please do so. You'll have 3 minutes. Well, I mean, you're one person, so
Sure.
I don't know, if you're going to take 45 minutes, I'll probably cut you off.
I'm hoping not. The 2-hour meeting is long enough. It's time for everybody for dinner and that. Hi, I'm Brian Hansen. Nice to see you all again. I just had something I had written up here, and I just wanted to publicly bring this out. Good evening. As a taxpaying resident, I'm always supportive of our first responders emotionally and financially, as they truly, I believe, represent our community and government at the government level. Public safety is also a very important value to me personally, especially when it comes to traffic, accessibility, and necessary maintenance for our infrastructure. I say "our" as it's all of our tax-paying citizens using the walks, roads, and public buildings that is funded by our budgets. The fact that capital improvements like sidewalks, street repairs, ADA ramps, and other capital improvements maintenance budgets were slashed to fund pay raises for other agendas does not sit well with most, while general repairs continue to be neglected. I've been waiting for years for new sidewalks in front of our home, only to be told that there was no money. Brentwood is about to face a major traffic influx through our neighborhoods, with multiple closures and potential detours that will surely have negative effects on our infrastructure. The lack of foresight to not allocate funds for this hope for a windfall in these areas is not a good financial practice. Let's pray that we are not headed into a recession from our current inflation rates. It seems to be best practice to utilize outside consultants as they give us an unbiased opinion based on facts, especially when spending the taxpayer dollars. Most recently, the pay consultants recommended keeping the pay status at the 75th percentile for our first responders. Ways and Means Committee recommended this action, while a few of our elected officials moved this to the 95th percentile, which was voted and approved during an alderman meeting. I am a bit concerned about the point of committees and the cost associated with these special consultants to provide these feedback to the committees that are not followed through at the alderman level. So what's the point of paying consultants to provide the data and the recommendations if the end result is to move forward with the personal agenda already in process? Smoke and mirrors, right? Most recently, Alderman Sims narrowly won a re-election campaign with full support backing of the firefighters to directly benefit from this recent pay raise. Political signs appeared in neighborhoods showing support from our fire department for Alderman Sims. Who paid for the fire department signs and campaigns for her support? Chief? I hope not Brentwood tax dollars. During the voting day, the firefighters stumped at the polling locations to show support for Alderman Sims. I assume our first responders were off duty and were in support of Sims by handing out flyers. Who asked them to stump for her, or was this done on their own accord? This assistance clearly helped in the re-election campaign, and there was a narrow 10-vote margin between candidates.
After the election, I did some research about public campaigns and how they are supported specifically at the government level. Some jurisdictions include restrictions for public works and first responders while employed from running for political office, actively working on a candidate's campaign, or contributing money for a political candidate, or supporting or opposing a referendum issue. Bola, what is the city of Brentwood's policy for public employees openly supporting this? Were funds from the city of Brentwood departments used on this campaign? I'm here to ask that Alderman Sims recuse herself from voting in upcoming budgets related to these pay rates, percentage rates, and pensions, as this is perceived by many like a conflict of interest and lack of ethics related to the changes in the first responder and public works conversations until the recent activities are investigated and answered. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the gallery that would care to address the committee? All right. Seeing none. So I forget the motion to, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
We have to do that?
No, we don't have
Or
to
do
do
we
that.
have to do
So
that
moved.
anymore?
Oh,
Second.
no-
All those in
yeah,
favor say
aye.
aye.
Aye.